greater the cross you bear, the greater the crown you wear. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Sports for Champions podcast. Today I'm joined by Chris Bennett, Hammer Throw extraordinaire. How are you today?
Good mate, yourself?
Very well, thank you. Really great to have you here. So I'd like to start, if we could, how are your preparations going for the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, they're going well. It's 35 days to go.
Yep.
It'll be pretty busy. I've got a World Champs before that as well, so it adds in a little bit of a extra connotation to it. So yeah, it's good fun, but it's always nice to represent Scotland and we get a new kilt every time we go, so made to measure, so it can't beat Commonwealth Games.
That's awesome. And how close to the World Champs?
The World Champs are actually, they start on the 15th of July in Oregon.
Wow.
So we fly out to Oregon on the 3rd of July, hopefully if I'm selected, and then we fly back on the 17th of July, and I'm quite fortunate I don't compete till the end of the Commonwealth Games, so we're on the start of the programme of the World Champs and the end of the programme of Commonwealth Games, so a bit of time to recover from the travel.
It's quite a quick turnaround. How would it be? So presumably it's just the luck of the draw basically where you get put.
I think it's more the timetable's out for World Champs before the Commonwealth Games, and we might be more fortunate because we've got qualifying and final scheduled at the minute Commonwealth Games, and we might only have a straight final, so we get an extra 2 days recovery. But it's literally just your luck of the draw. There can be some influence sometimes if people want to double up in certain events and then you're famous and a world record holder that makes some allowances for you. But for me, they probably won't do that. I can't throw my toys at the farm and protest. Yeah, I'd love to, but I can't.
It'd be a fair throw if you did.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and where are you at in your stages in terms of preparation at the moment?
So, yeah, we've got British Champs on Saturday in Manchester. So, 26th, I think it is. So, yeah, it's going well at the minute. I've got a shoulder injury at the minute that I need to get operated on. So, I'm trying to manage that, get injections on it, get physios every week. So, it's not been ideal prep, but you make the best of what you've got. It's never going to be plain sailing. You're an athlete, so you've got to make the best of what you've got.
How do you accommodate an injury like that? Obviously, that's one of the most intense areas.
Yeah, you've got to take a lot of stuff out of training. So there's a lot of stuff I would normally do at this period of training that I've got to take out. So I can't do any overhead things. I can't catch Olympic lifts. I can't load my shoulder. I subconsciously changed my throwing technique as well, which meant my distances were suffering in comp. So I've just had the injection on Friday, so touch wood, it's been all good, and I'm not surviving off painkillers and anti-inflammatories anymore.
That's crazy. How much training are you doing at the moment?
At the minute, not much. It sounds strange to getting closer to a competition that we're not doing much, because I'm competing on Saturday. I've had 2 rest days this week, which is quite rare for me. But normally we'll do 5 days a week. So we'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. Always go for a sauna or a steam room, although in this weather I don't think we need that at the minute because it's roasting. And then Friday, Saturday I'll train as well. So 3 times on a Monday, 3 times on a Tuesday, Wednesdays twice, Fridays twice, and Saturdays just once. So it's a pretty busy week for me.
It's a lot, yeah. Is that all? Is it generally without your injuries? Would that be all throwing, or would there be a lot of strength and conditioning?
Both. So Monday, Tuesday I'll throw twice. So I'll throw in the morning, go home, have a nap, have some food, and then I'm back in the gym at 4 o'clock, and then I'm throwing again after that. Tuesday's the same, although I'm running on a Tuesday and jumping on a Tuesday. Wednesday's throwing and lifting, Friday's throwing and lifting as well. So a lot of weights getting thrown about in the gym, but I can't really do much upper body at the minute, although we don't need it for my shoulder, so it's just been trying to adapt different things.
I see, yeah. So obviously with the strength and conditioning, you're really trying to target the areas that are under stress during that throw. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the mechanics of the throw itself and how you train for that?
So, yeah, basically, in an ideal world, you would be 6'4" and have the arm span of like 220, and I've not got that. So I've got to work on other areas of my throw. So my technique has to be on point. So effectively you want to minimise as much time as you've got 1 foot on the ground as possible, because we can't accelerate the hammer if you've got 1 foot on the ground. We're constantly fighting gravity as well. So it's trying to minimise the ground contact time with my right foot, but also trying to keep the hammer as far away from me as possible, the centre of mass, which is my body, away from me at times. But that doesn't mean having bad posture or good posture. It means being able to be in a strong position that you're able to work the ball and get that through that. So it's basically centrifugal force that does it, and it leaves my hand about 50 miles an hour.
Wow.
So it's pretty quick. And if it hit you, it would probably kill you.
That's insane. So obviously to keep that under control, there's a lot of strength involved. Have you always been strong? Yeah, I've always been strong. I've always been naturally big as well. Like I used to drink 3 litres of milk a day, which is probably the size that I am. I don't recommend it, by the way. 3 litres of milk a day, yeah. So I've always been big and strong. My dad was always big. But I've had to work at it over the years to get stronger, but I tend not to lose it as much now, so I don't have to do as much to maintain that strength level. And I probably could get stronger if I'd spent more time in the gym, but it's risk reward. I want to spend more time in the gym where I'm putting my body under more stress that I don't need to have.
So it's just maintaining that strength at the minute. But I'm pretty strong. I'm pretty strong.
So how old are you now?
32. I've got more hair on my face than I do on my head. I'm losing my hair at the back. I'm 32, so I've been doing the sport 20 years now, and it feels like I've been doing 20 years as well.
Feeling every day of it.
Everything aches in the morning when I get up. It's like what doesn't hurt today, and you peel yourself out of bed. So yeah, it's been tough, but I think I've probably got another 4 or 5 years left in the sport. We're kind of coming into our prime now because this is the age that we tend to peak. Because it's a skill and it's a strength-based sport, your technique develops and your strength develops as the older you get. And because we don't have an impact, so it's not like running, rugby, football, we're not making impact with the ground. We tend not to get many serious injuries. If we do get a serious injury, it tends to be because we've done something either stupid or we've done something wrong in the technique. So touch wood, I've been quite fortunate apart from my shoulder, which was a freak accident. I fell on the ice. I'm kind of coming at the peak of my career, but I think when I retire, which is probably when I'm 36, so 4 years from now, I'll look back and I'll probably decide I don't want to retire. I'll probably keep going. I'll still do it for fun because it'll be hard to step away from the sport.
So when you look back and you retire, what do you think? Obviously you've still got a good few years left in you, but what up to now would you say has been your happiest memory in the sport?
Probably two things. Competing at a Commonwealth Games in Glasgow in my home city, which was pretty cool.
How was that?
Oh, crazy.
The crowd good.
Like for 2 weeks, it was just party central in Glasgow. It's the best way to describe it. And like Glasgow's such a welcoming city that it was nice to see it shown in such a good light. I think there was a stat over one weekend in Glasgow, 1 million people used public transport. We only have 600,000 people in Glasgow, so it just shows the footfall that it brought into the city, and it showed the city in such a good light. And I personally thought it was the best games ever. But for me personally, getting to compete at Hampden, which is a football stadium turned into an athletic stadium, was crazy. Traditionally at major sporting events, you only have half a crowd in the morning and it fills up at night. We had 45,000 there every single day, and they're clapping our warm-up throws, clapping us coming out. It was crazy, man. And like just the social media buzz around it as well, I'd never experienced it. Like people wanting tickets off you, people wanting to come see you, wishing you well, and it was an amazing experience to be part of, and it was a great experience. And then it didn't go as well for me as I hoped it would. So I had a tough 18 months in the lead up to it. I'd lost my dad in 2012, and then I lost my coach 7 months later. So I didn't have an ideal prep for it, and I'm looking at it going in with a complete wrong attitude that I'm in the form of my life. I'm going to go in and win a medal because these people wanted me to do well, and I really wanted this and that, and it never happened, and I finished dead last. Right. So it was the happiest moment of my life, but it was also one of the worst moments of my life as well. But I then used that to spur me on to bigger, better things, to come out the back of it and go, do you know what? This is not how you're going to be remembered in the sport. This is not going to be your crowning moment in the sport. You're going to push on and go to bigger, better things. Now, for me, that was going to another Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast, because when I started, I had no aspirations of ever going to Commonwealth Games. So that was kind of like the pinnacle for me at that moment, and I ended up the disappointment of finishing dead last at Commonwealth Games 2 years later spurred me on to go to the Olympics when people said I wouldn't go, which is ironically my second favourite moment in the Olympics, which is pretty cool. And going to the Olympics is such a buzz. Like when they say that there's 64 million people in Britain and you're part of a team of 300 people that's going to Olympics, you're part of a really, really small percentage, and there's only ever been 5,000 people from Great Britain that went to Olympics. So it's a crazy thing to be a part of, and just bringing all the countries together to compete for sport, and putting all political issues aside, putting all like everything, the hardship aside, and just competing about sport for those 2 weeks is such a humbling experience as well. And the amount of free stuff and like the experience you get when you go to Olympics is crazy. It's like the village is such a buzz. The food hall's 24 hours a day. There's a McDonald's that's there that's 24 hours a day, and it's free, and it's like all the athletes just go there when they finish competing. And I remember there was a sign that said if you're ordering 30 items or more, you have to go to a different queue. So who goes to McDonald's and orders 30 items?
That's insane.
Like people were going doing whole flat orders. But yeah, those are probably my two fondest memories. And I hope there's more to come. We've obviously got Birmingham this year, and then hopefully Gold Coast, Victoria in 4 years' time, which will be pretty cool as well.
Obviously, the bit of a difference between Glasgow and the Gold Coast in terms of weather. How does that affect your performance?
Ironically, Glasgow was roasting hot that week. Roasting hot that week. We went to the opening ceremony, and it was 36 degrees, and the bus had no aircon. And bear in mind, we're all wearing our kilts. And if you've ever worn a kilt, it is full wool. It's a full-on experience. But Gold Coast was different level. Like we were up in Sunshine Coast for 3 weeks beforehand. It's 32 degrees every day. There's not an ounce of rain. It was a sick experience being up there. But it's very, very different. But even Rio was even different to Gold Coast, where it was 36 degrees and 80% humidity when we were competing.
The humidity is the big thing, isn't it?
It was so warm that the glue in my shoes started melting.
Oh wow!
And that's 9 o'clock in the morning. So that wasn't a fun experience, but you've just got to deal with it, and you've got to adapt beforehand, and put yourself in that environment where you go out early enough so that you do adapt to the heat, and you adapt to the time zone, and you adapt to the different dynamics of that country as well. So you can't just rock up the day before. You can't just get on a plane today and compete in 4 days' time in Australia unless you fly business class. Like we all fly economy to go there, so you can't do that. So you have to go plenty of time in advance and adjust to the climate.
How did you find Rio in general? The city, the village, all that kind of stuff.
For me, it was quite sad and quite disappointing, and it's strange saying that because I guess for us as Team GB athletes, the village was a good experience because when Team GB take over the tower block that we live in, they are sponsored by DFS. They furnish it with nice things. Everything was finished, but athletes were going into their accommodation and the plaster on the wall wasn't finished. There was different things like that. The food was undercooked at the start, so a lot of the athletes were getting food poisoning, getting sick, and had to quarantine and different things like that. So they then overcooked the food, which was a bit of it was edible, but it wasn't the nicest thing. But we had casual dining, which was really good, which was a barbecue there. And just Brazil, it was a really interesting place to go to because it's one of the only places I've been to that you can look one side of the street and you've got mansions, and on the other side of the street you've got favelas. And the crime rate there is incredible. We had a security briefing after our competing about going out, and we weren't allowed to go out of the village basically because they were worried that somebody would get kidnapped. And they said there's no such thing as a missing person inquiry here, it goes straight to a homicide or a murder inquiry. And when you hear things like that, you're like, how can such a beautiful country be like that? And for me it was it the right venue to host it? I don't know, because a lot of the venues have now become disused, and where's the legacy? We talk about legacy after London, we've got all these venues. Where's the legacy for Rio? And did we really use it to line someone's pockets? Do you know what I mean? But it was there, it was an experience, it was class. We got to go to the Maracanã Stadium that held the World Cup final. 100,000 people at the closing ceremony. It was pretty crazy. Brazil won the Olympics when we were out there. The football, Neymar was playing, and the buzz around the place when that goal went in was, I honestly thought that like a bomb or something went off, because everybody just started screaming and shouting, and then I realised Brazil were playing in the Olympic final and they won. So yeah, it's a really nice place to go.
It's interesting you talk about legacy, because I know that the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow has actually had a real legacy, and it's really changed things in the city. Can you tell us touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, so the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow's quite I would call it a working class city, typical industrial city. It was the second city of the empire, so it had a lot of shipbuilding, a lot of factories and things like that. And over the past 30-40 years they've all closed down. It was typical tenement blocks. Everyone's seen the photos of tenement blocks in Glasgow, so they were all demolished and it was just kind of empty space that was left there. So when the Commonwealth Games were coming to Glasgow, and ironically when it was announced, it was between Glasgow and Abuja, and when I was working in a sports shop at the time, and I said I really preferred to go to Abuja because I wanted to go to Nigeria, I changed my opinion when I went to the Commonwealth Games and it was there in Glasgow. But they built the athletes' village, then 50% of it got sold off to private housing, 50% of it went to social housing as well. So it then went to people that were in need. They built so many good venues around the city. The east end of the city was done up and it looked amazing for the whole period that was there. For instance, the track that was at Hampden was ripped up and was laid at another 2 sports centres in Glasgow, one in Glasgow, one in Grangeworth, and it gave people the opportunity to train outside of there. So it was a great experience off the back of that, and there still is a legacy in sport, especially Scottish athletics. We had 56 athletes, I think, and it was no coincidence that 2 years later we had 18 athletes at the Olympics, and the most we'd ever had was 7 before that.
There you go.
That's the thing, and we've now got more and more people making GB teams, and we've got people like making the world stage and making Olympic finals and medaling at the Olympics. So that is the legacy of Glasgow. At the end of the day, participation increased, and if you increase participation, you increase performance as well. Because I like to think of it as a pyramid. The wider you make the base of your pyramid, the higher you make the peak of the pyramid, and the peak is the performance side of things. So the level that I'm at and above that. So the more participation we can get, the higher the peak is in my eyes.
Yeah, it does seem to be getting stronger and stronger across the whole UK.
Yeah, just wish the football team would sort themselves out and qualify for the World Cup.
That's the only thing. I think there's a few bright sparks in there. I think it'll be okay in the future. So I was wondering, when we talk legacy and participation, do you remember what inspired you to first get into this kind of thing?
Ironically, it was the Commonwealth Games in Manchester in 2002. There was a big sort of buzz around it. It was I can't remember what the stadium was. I know it's known as the Etihad now, but I can't remember what it was called. It's the old Ellen Road, and I'd seen Hammer Throw on the TV, Guy that won it, English guy, Mick Jones, won. Had a skinhead, he won it, he threw it far, screamed and shouting, and then did a front flip at the end of it, and I was like, pretty cool, want to try that? 2 weeks later I was down at my local athletics track and I tried it, and I was quite good at it. I enjoyed it, I was good at it, I could beat people at it. I started training.
Sorry, how old were you at that point?
12
wow.
years old, so 20 years. And I'd already started in athletics before that, but I'd seen Hammer and I was like, I wanted to try it because it was quite cool. And this guy, he's probably my size now. He was just throwing things far and winning things in front of a home crowd. I thought, I want to be part of that. And it's quite a cool story because if you fast forward 12 years later, when I went to 2014 Commonwealth Games in a home city, he was my coach at 2014. It's funny how things work out these ways, and we've got a saying that what's for you won't go by you, and that was one of those cool moments. That the man who inspired me to take part in athletics was actually my coach in 2014. It's a pretty cool way it works out.
That's brilliant. And do you remember the first time that you sort of realised that you've got a real talent for this? Maybe an early competition or something?
I think when I was probably 14, I went down to the British Championships and I made the final, and I'd only been training for 2 years, so I was quite happy with that. And then I was maybe guilty of being talented but a little bit lazy when I was younger. I had a really pushy mum who really wanted me to do loads of things and didn't want me playing video games and PlayStation in the house, so she took me to every single sport that we could go to under the sun. I did football, I did rugby, I did tennis, badminton, trampoline, and orienteering. Like, no trampolines were ever injured in the space of my trampoline career. Like, nothing was broken. But I did everything, so I always had a broad base of sports. But then I fitted in athletics, and I fitted in that social circle. So for me, it worked out perfectly. And then I was guilty of being a little bit lazy, and I had the choice to make. Was I going to be someone who did this as a full-time job, or someone who was going to be just a hobby? You know what I mean? And after, when I got to the age of 19 and I'd just medalled at the British Championships for the first time, I was really quite happy with it, and I thought, do you know what, this is for me now.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's actually one of the biggest recurring themes that comes up in the podcast, the roles of talent and hard work.
Yeah.
How do you see them playing off against each other?
I think talent gets you so far, but you have to put the hard yards in, because you see it so often, and I've seen it in sports so many times. Kids that are very talented and a lot bigger than their peers, they'll maybe be 13, 14, they'll be the biggest in the class, they'll have a full scale beard at the age of 13. I see kids now and they've got a better beard than me, and they're 13, and they're talented and they've got away because they have grown up at a rate faster to their peers. But that only gets you so far, and that will get you to a certain stage. You then have to put the work in afterwards to be actually able to nurture that talent, and actually, okay, talent gets you so far, but then the hard work has to start at some point.
And do you remember the first moment when you realised, I'm going to take this professional?
Yeah, so Commonwealth Games, I speak a lot about Commonwealth Games. In 2009, I had my 20th birthday, and I went to Cardiff for a weekend away with the boys. Hadn't trained in a week, and I went on a weekend bender, and I decided, you know what, I don't really know if this is for me, seemed strange, and my coach was pestering me, and eventually after 3 weeks I went back, and he said, you could be making a Commonwealth Games this year and you've messed up. So I trained the rest of that year, threw a 4-metre personal best, but it wasn't enough to qualify for Delhi Commonwealth Games, and he never ever let me forget it, that I should have been at Delhi Commonwealth Games. And I thought, do you know what, it's easier if I just prove I'm wrong, because then he shuts up and then he stops nogging me and he starts moaning at me. So at that moment I was like, do you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. And there's been so many times in my life when someone said I can't do something. If someone tells me I can't do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to rub your face in it when I'm doing it. I like to do these sort of things. So it was that moment where after Delhi Commonwealth Games, I watched them on the TV, was disappointed that I wasn't there, and I came out and I threw 3 metres further on what the qualifying distance was for Delhi the year before, and I threw the qualifying distance for Glasgow 2014. So for me, that was kind of the defining moment where I was like, right, okay, you've justified your decision.
We've all got to find our motivation.
Yeah.
Is that something that you struggle with, or do you have a certain method of keeping yourself motivated?
I think I love being the underdog. I love telling me when people tell me I can't do something, or I'm not going to qualify for something, or I'm not going to throw a certain distance, because I'm like, okay, you don't believe in me, but I believe in myself, and I'm going to prove you wrong. If somebody tells me I can do something, I'm just like, yeah, I can probably do it. I can be guilty of being a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit laid back. I need people to tell me that I can't do things, and I need to do something, or you'll never do this, and you'll never, like, they told me the whole year I went to the Olympics I wasn't going, and I wasn't good enough to go to the Olympics. Well, I kind of messed up their plans, because I went and won the Olympic trials and I made European Champs final, and in my head I wasn't going to Olympics, and they phoned me 2 days after European Champs and 3 weeks before the Olympics to tell me I was going to the Olympics, and I was kind of like, I proved you wrong. I sat there with a smug look on my face.
That's brilliant. It's so good to hear. I don't know if you've seen the documentary, the series, The Last Dance.
Love it.
So it's kind of plays into that, doesn't it? So like, it might not be the biggest game of your career, but you've got to find that little kernel of, you know, a bit of nous.
I love that documentary. Like, I love Michael Jordan. Like, that era was the era that I was growing up in, and I don't take a big interest in basketball, but I knew who Michael Jordan were, Scottie Pippen were, Dennis Rodman were, you know, people like that, and he was obsessed with being the best that he could be, and that's what you got to be as athletes.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's not easy to maintain that over a whole career, especially unfunded. That's one of the biggest challenges.
And there's times where I've decided if I don't want to do the sport anymore, and I take myself away. And I didn't get into this sport to make loads of money. I didn't get in this sport to be famous. It's, you know, those are byproducts. If those happen, that's great. I do it because I enjoy it. If I don't enjoy it, why am I doing it? Why am I wasting my time and I'm wasting other people's time if I don't enjoy it? So there have been times when I've struggled with my motivation. I've been like, do you know what? I'm going to remove myself from the situation. I'm not going to be in contact with the sport. I'm not going to do anything like this. And if I decide that I'm missing it and I want to go back, I'll go back. If I don't decide, then that's me. I'm finished. And I've had a good career at that point. You know, I think this was 2018. I'd been to 2 Commonwealth Games. I'd been to Olympics. I'd achieved probably more than what most athletes could ever dream of. And I was in the best competition in the world. And I decided, do you know what? Is this for me or not? And it was for me, and I came back, you know, and then lockdown hit again, and I struggled, and, you know, I took a full-time job working. It wasn't easy, and again I was falling in and out of love with training. You know, I was working 5 days a week delivering shopping for Tesco, which is sometimes a harder workout than some of the training. If you're carrying up 100 kilos of messages up the stairs, you know about it. But I decided to go part-time, and then because I felt I was falling out of love with sport, I was overweight at the time, you know, I was struggling with my motivation. And that was June 2020. So by the end of June 2020 to the middle of August 2020, I lost 24 kilos.
Wow.
Because I was too overweight, and I just decided, you know what? I'm going to get up every morning. I'm going to do my session before I have my breakfast. I'm going to do my running before I have my breakfast. Then I'm going to go home, have my breakfast, train, then go to work and do the same thing every day. And I became obsessed with I got myself in a routine. The first week was hard to get myself into the routine, but once I got into the routine, it was easy getting up every morning. And when you started seeing the progress, it was easy to do.
They say 2 weeks to get into a routine, and then it's harder to get out of it if you nail it for that.
It is hard changing your lifestyle from when you've been, because like during the first part of lockdown, I've been staying up to like 4 a.m, 5 a.m, watching box sets, you know, rewatching Sons of Anarchy, Luther, Line of Duty, different things like that. And I struggled with a purpose, so that's why I actually went out and got a full-time job, because it gave me a purpose to go. I had to be up, had to be in work by 8 o'clock, I had to be at work at 9 o'clock. And it gave me that purpose and that structure, but it didn't give me the balance around training which I needed to do. So I needed to find that again, and I went to the British Champs in 2020, and I was in really good shape, but I hadn't trained in a cage or a circle for a while, and it threw me a little bit, and I got beat at British Champs, and I've never been so angry with myself in all my life. I said, I'm starting back training on Monday, and the coach was like, no, you need to have a week off. I was like, no, I am starting back training on Monday, you're not. He said, just take a week off. And I got back into training, and I was like, do you know what, I'm never going to feel as bad as I did on that day. And I had my best year ever last year, so it seemed to work for me. It worked for me.
I think it's quite a common thing. The pandemic really threw everyone. I know that all of our athletes really struggled because obviously the schools were shut, so we couldn't throw any events. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of Sports for Champions played in your career and how it helps our athletes? Yeah,
it's been great for me. Like, I came on board with Sports for Champions just ironically after I lost my funding, and for me, it's a chance for me to go and speak about my journey through sport and how it's influenced me through sport. You know, I didn't go to university. I didn't go to college. I left school at 16. School told me I wouldn't amount to anything because I'd left school at 16. And I've been to the Olympics. So I've got things on my CV that will shock people and won't have, other people won't have them on their CV. I've got experiences in life events that will be on my CV that other athletes could only dream of. But that is my chance to go speak to a group of kids in a school, to empower them to potentially go reach their dreams. And if I can have the influence on one person, then I've had a good experience in that workshop. And that's what we as athletes should be doing. We want to give back to the communities and to the schools and give them a dream, so that if they can meet an Olympian for one day, then it's great. But it also allows me to train full time because I can get funding from that as well. So the support I've got from Sports for Champions has been invaluable for me. I don't have to effectively work outside of this, which is great for me.
It's so inspirational, and having had the feedback from the teachers that I get on your visits, the kids take so much from it. I'd like to take us back a little bit, if we could. Could you tell us a little bit about your training regime and nutrition and how that kind of plays off with each other?
So, training regime, I spoke a little bit about it in the podcast about how hard I train. So I train 5 days a week, sometimes 3 times a day, sometimes 2 days a day, sometimes once a day, sorry. But what I will do is I'll take the week's training, so I'll have it on a daily planner, right? And I'll use a traffic light system. So it'll be a green day, an amber day, and a red day. So for me, a green day is I've got 3 really hard sessions. I can kind of eat what I want within reason, as long as I'm getting enough nutrients and enough macros in to cover me and I'm essentially recovering. Amber for me is a day where I'm mindful of what I eat. I can still have a little maybe like treat on the side, but I can't go absolutely crazy, so I'm trying to watch what I eat and that. So I'll maybe change the source of my carbohydrates. So instead of having like pasta, potatoes, rice, I'll change it to vegetables. I'll have it with soup and different things like that. And then a red day for me is a day where I am not training. I'm looking to cut a little bit of calories because I don't need as much fuel for me as that day. I'm still a big guy, I still need fuel. I'm still trying to drink 3 to 4 litres of water a day, but I'm mindful of my carbs. So my protein intake goes up and my carbohydrate content goes down. And essentially my fat content goes up as well, because fat's a slow burning energy release. So it takes about 8 hours for your body to break down, I think it's actually longer, to break down fat, whereas carbohydrates is 4 hours. So I don't need that quick sustained like energy source that I do in the morning. So yeah, that's kind of what my nutrition looks like as such. I'll tend to eat probably 5 or 6 times a day. Rather than having 3 big meals, it's easier for me to eat the same amount of food over 5 to 6 meals, and my body's constantly fueled and constantly not having to digest a big massive meal. Because you know what it's like when you eat a massive meal, you just want to sit down and sleep. But we can't do that when we're training. So it's maybe 6 meals that are spread across the day. So that'll be breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, a pre-bed snack as well. And I'm always looking to get about 40 grams of protein into that. So it's quite a high protein diet I've got.
Such a strict regime. How would you say the life of the athlete compares to, say, somebody who just does a regular job? And things like that?
Well, I don't have a social life during the summer. I don't see my friends for months on end. They're still my friends and I still catch up with them, but I don't see them for months on end. So I think since April I've had 12 days at home, which is not fun, but it's part of the job. You know, it's one of the perks we get as athletes, that we get to travel all these different countries and we don't get to spend much time at home. But you know, there's a trade-off for that as well. We don't get much time at home. So during the summer, I pretty much don't have a social life, which I tend to balance off quite well, because during the winter, I tend to be a little bit more relaxed with my regime. I still have my set training times. I still have my set routine for training. But if I want to go out with my friends on a Friday night, I'll go out with my friends on a Friday night. I won't drink. I won't do anything crazy. I'll drive there, drive home, be back in bed for a reasonable time. So it's about finding the balance. And one of the big things that I found was actually really good for me and my mental health was actually going to the football. So I go to football every week, but home, away, everywhere. So I go to Europe. We go to Europe with Celtic and everything like that. It's class. But that was one of the good things for my mental health, because it was something that I couldn't influence for a couple of hours. That I could go watch, I could go shout my abuse, I could go cheer, I could do it, whatever. Can't influence it. It's sport, and it lets me switch off. And people around me know I'm an athlete, but they don't want to talk about me, the athlete. They want to talk about the football. So it actually takes the pressure off me a little bit, that we just want to go there and talk about football. Like we got a joke amongst my friends that they still call me unemployed. I'm unemployed technically, but I'm a full-time athlete, so it's a long outstanding joke. But I think you need that. I think as athletes we get a lot of criticism and a lot of praise, and the praise tends to outweigh the criticism. But you need people to keep you grounded and remember where you came from, and remember that, you know, I'm just a boy from a council house in Glasgow that's lucked out and been in the Olympics.
That's amazing. So you talked about football home and away. Actually, Lazio away, probably the best game I've ever
seen. Man, I met Neil Lennon 6 months ago, and I told him it was the best night of my life. Mate, it was amazing.
It's right up there for me.
On
the way to the stadium and the buses, everything, the atmosphere was just crazy.
It was mental. Like, I don't think we'll experience an away win like that in a long time. Although, and then last season was disappointing. 1, we couldn't get in because of COVID, and 2, we lost the league. But Ange Postecoglou is God in my eyes. I've got a statue of Ange up my windowsill I pray to every night. God, he's a brilliant man.
So that actually brings us on quite nicely to the next question. Who's your favourite sporting hero?
Henrik Larsson.
Right.
Henrik Larsson. That man, he was originally when I was growing up, I wanted to play up front for Celtic and I wanted to be Henrik Larsson. Well, I don't have dreadlocks, I'm not Swedish and I can't kick a football, so I was kind of on a loser with that past. But yeah, he was my idol growing up. And then more so as like I come in, we've got like a lot of boxing memorabilia around us here, like people like Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. My dog's named after Frank Bruno, like different things like that. So I've got a lot of admiration for boxers as well, and like Muhammad Ali, I think just the way he conducted himself, kind of in and around interviews, you know, the showmanship, but he always delivered and performed on the day. It's not how I would do it, but I've got to admire it, and you see that in Tyson Fury now. You know, it's pretty cool to watch.
Do you feel that being an athlete makes you a better person?
Yes.
In what way?
It allows me to use my personality to help people, and I'm all about helping people. And it allows me to share my experiences, the good and the bad, and if those experiences can help one person, then my job has been complete for that day. So like the school visits, if I go in and I've had kids speak to me about their mental health, because I'm really open about my mental health, I'll really speak about my downfalls and my good times, and I've had kids speak to me about my mental health, they probably wouldn't speak to about the teacher, because the teacher knows them and they've got a pre-existing opinion of you. And this was a big thing for me. Someone had a pre-existing opinion of me and I didn't want to change that opinion, and just that I've had maybe 4 or 5 kids come up and speak to me in different schools about it, and for me that's what it's about. Like if I can make a positive difference on a child's life, then that's what being an athlete is about, as opposed to actually performing there. In my eyes personally, that makes a greater difference, because if you perform well, you do good at it. If you change someone's life, someone else does better out of it.
And that leads us on also nicely. Do you have any advice to a young person who's maybe thinking about starting a career in sport?
Take every opportunity that you're given. I used to say no to so many things, and I've said yes to so many things. I've changed my opinion now, and when I got to the age of 21, 22, I started saying yes to everything, because I didn't know whether it was for me or whether it wasn't for me. So if I take an opportunity, I say yes to it and it works out, I've won in the eyes. I've gained something from that. If I say yes to an opportunity and it doesn't work out, I've not lost anything. I've tried something, it's not for me, I can move on. So take every opportunity that's thrown at you.
That's great advice. And then would you have anything that's maybe Hammer Throw specific?
Oh, that's a good question actually. Find a good coach. Finding a good coach early makes a difference. If you find a good coach early and they teach you the basics well, then you'll go far in the sport.
Can you see yourself getting into that?
Yeah, I want to go to America one day and coach.
That's
where the money's at. It's where the money's at, got these colleges in the States. And I think I want to do it a little bit differently to how they do it. They only see the athletes as, and this is just my nature, they only see the athletes as commodities for 4 years. But for me, is if I can make that athlete a better person and a better hammer thrower or thrower at the same time, then I've made a positive impact in their life, and that's what I'm all about.
Awesome. So obviously you've got British champs, world champs, Commonwealth Games coming up.
So yeah, probably British champs this weekend. I think by the time this goes out, I'll hopefully have won. And then we got world champs in July, Commonwealth Games at the end of July, start August, and then we get European champs in Munich towards the middle of August. So it's a pretty busy summer for us. So it's going to be pretty mental, but it's good fun. I'm enjoying it.
Wow. Is there one thing in particular you're looking forward to, or maybe the people at home should look out for?
I think probably the Commonwealth Games. Because that'll be on TV at a good time when people can watch it. It'll be on BBC, whereas the World Champs will be on a little bit later because of the time difference in America. So yeah, Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, the last Thursday and the last Saturday is when I'll be on. So hopefully people can tune in and watch it.
Brilliant. Well, we'll all be rooting for you in the office, and we'll be sure to tune in. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great talking to you, and I'm sure the folks at home will really enjoy the podcast.
Hopefully.
Brilliant. Cool. All right. Thank you all for joining us as well. It's been another fantastic episode of the Sports for Champions podcast. Stay tuned. Make sure you like, subscribe, and keep an eye out for more in the very near future. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, be sure to leave us a like and a subscribe, and check out all our other videos for some more great interviews and content. Bye.